Jag heter Erik Bresky och representerar iHub Sweden och befinner mig till vardags på Science Park Borås och Smart Textiles. Och det tycker jag är fantastiskt, liksom vi är 87 anmälda till att prata om systemtransformation. Det är fantastiskt roligt tycker jag. Och iHub Sweden, vi är en community och en samverkansplattform för olika innovationsmiljöer. Det kan vara vindvägsinitiativ, science parks eller andra innovationsmiljöer. Och det vi har gemensamt är väl att vi har kommit till insikt att väldigt många av de utmaningar vi har framåt, de projekten vi arbetar med, handlar väldigt mycket om systeminnovation och transformation. Och för att kunna bli duktig på det så måste vi jobba tillsammans. Vi måste jobba väldigt mycket tvärsektoriellt, branschöverskridande, tvärdisciplinärt. Och för att kunna vara duktig på det så måste vi hitta nya mötesplatser. Mycket en nyckel för det här är att erfarenhetsutbyte och lärande. Och det ser vi som en uppgift för iHub Sweden. Därav att vi har startat upp den här communityn. Jag själv som kommer från min mylla här nere i Borås. Vi har nu ett Vinnova-uppdrag att jobba med en systemtransformator för ett hållbart textilsystem. Där vi kopplar ihop kommunala energibolag med varumärken och handelsföretag för att förändra till ett mer hållbart textilsystem. Det är ett exempel på systemtransformation. Då lämnar jag över till Erika som kommer att hålla dagens seminarium och börja prata engelska också. Så att välkommen Erika som också representerar iHub Sweden.
Ja men tack, och jag tänkte det finns ju en del andra personer här från iHubs också som bara kanske vill presentera sig eller säga några ord.
Jag kan börja. Hej, Katarina Berglund heter jag. Representerar iHubs och Automation Region med bas på Mälardalens universitet. Där vi finns både i Västmanland och Sörmland, Skellefteå och även i USA, Silicon Valley. Hej på er!
Och hej, Magnus Borén heter jag. Jag är vd för Compare och vi driver ett vindväxtinitiativ som heter Digital Arena och vi jobbar också med systemtransformation på det här sättet och vi finns i Karlstad, har kontor i Arvika och Stockholm också, så vi finns lite överallt. Kul att se er allihopa.
Okej, Paul Nemes heter jag, representerar också i det här sammanhanget iHubs och Paper Province. Paper Province utgår från Karlstad. Vi jobbar också med systemtransformation kopplat till den skogsbaserade och cirkulära ekonomin.
Känner vi oss färdiga från iHubs eller ville Erik också?
Nej, jag tror det blir jättebra här att
toppen.
lämna över till dig nu.
Ja, men så vi känner att det är en ganska stor uppslutning idag både från vårt håll och fantastiskt med så många deltagare. But I will switch to English now so everyone can follow and of course our speakers. So my name is Erika Tonos and one of my first tasks at iHubs has been to create this community program and learning. And I was introduced to systems thinking about a decade ago, and well, we know that it could be something really eye-opening and a way to move forward, but at the same time, perhaps it's not for the faint-hearted. So we are so happy to have with us Joss and Tobias idag, who has been some of the pioneers actually, and Joss has helped so much to gather so much about systems thinking and make it much more approachable to create so much education around this, and also created the SI Systems Innovation Network, which he will talk about today. And Tobias has also been working with the systems thinking principles with organizations in practice for many years, apart from having been the curator of the Nobel Prize Museum. So it feels so much easier to work with the systems thinking and innovation when we have so many with us also today in the forefront. And I can imagine you in the audience also who are here with us today are interested in these questions and things that we will talk about today. So I will just briefly show you the agenda and to see what's the plan for today. So it's very simple. Basically now after this introduction, Joss will start and we will have 15 minutes of him presenting, and then we will have 15 minutes for questions and answers, and then the same with Tobias, and questions and answers after that. So, and I would like to instruct you to just write your questions in the chat, and we will make sure that some of my colleagues will also help to keep track if there are many questions, so we can mention and ask these questions for everyone after the presentations. And then we will have some final discussion and outro, so like final words before we finish, and then how you can also be a part of this community and what possibilities forward we have. So just a couple of words about that. But before we start with the seminar for today, I would just like to give you a background of why we created this seminar series and the thought behind this. And of course, I was trying to make the perfect introduction and about this whole idea and why this is important. But since you are also with us here today, and there are so many people, and of course with the theme today of collective impact, I also want to make sure that we have space for actually our collective intelligence and wisdom here today, and to explore this together. So rather than me saying a lot of words here, because our speakers will do that anyway, I will actually just show you one or two images. And one of them I actually borrowed from Joss because he's posting a lot of interesting things on LinkedIn. So he will recognize this. But what I would like to is to just engage you for a minute or so to write a couple of comments or associations. What you think when you see this, which is like the starting point of why we are working with systems thinking in these perspectives. What comes to your mind when you see this? Feel free to write in the chat. Chaos. Circular thinking, reality, yes, exactly. And complexity, wicked problems. We're all stuck in a system under our own bubble. It's not a straightforward path. Pave our way. It's simple in the conference room, yeah? Can you recognize that? We have a lot of models describing a quite linear world, and it sounds simple, but then we have the reality. Yeah, it could be a creative space for thinking as well. And fantastic things outside. Lack of understanding of problems. Yeah, so you see you have a lot of understanding, or we share some similar understanding of this. So my point is that for quite a long time in the industrial era, we have been able to simplify reality a lot and have a sense of control and predictability. But now in a very globally interconnected world, which is becoming more and more complex, and also with so much technology speeding up things. It's like we have to remove those blindfolds because we need a wider perspective. We need to understand this complexity outside. And what is complexity? Well, that is reality. That's actually just how the world is. But we need new tools, new ways of thinking, new ways of collaborating and acting to deal with this reality that is just much more tangible for us today. And so this is just something that I'm like lifting, how do you say, like I'm suggesting that this could be a starting point, but I'm so just also very curious about your experiences and where you are working with innovation and change in your different positions. So this is maybe one way. Another way, if you go back to the classic times, the age of discoveries, that we are somehow in an unknown territory because we need this knowledge to navigate these new terrains. And that is one of the, you could say that very simplified, because there are so many theories and models around systems thinking. This is just a way of helping to see if we can navigate this terrain better. So the seminar series is supposed to be a guide for this, to help us to find ways that are more efficient and more systematic. So just a very quick introduction. So to help us to make this more structured, some kind of way to navigate this, we created 3 different kind of seminars for this spring, which are all connected to or inspired by Donella Meadows' leverage points, to try to get under the surface of the so-called iceberg model, which many of you are familiar with, to make sure that we can reach deeper and do something a bit more efficient about big systems transitions that many of us are working on. So the 3 different parts that you might have seen on our website is this. So the first one is this Gemensam genomslagskraft, which is about collective impact, and connected to leverage points, it's about addressing the social structures which are on a deeper level of the systems usually, or when you think about the iceberg model. And then we have the next part, which is called Realisera alternativa framtider, which is about basically how we can create alternative futures, but to change our thinking, our mindsets, and our paradigms. And this is one of the deepest leverage points, actually. And then the third is about to work data-driven and for real, because this could also help us to change our information flows and feedback loops and so on. That is also a very important leverage point. So without spending too much time on this introduction, I will now hand over to our first speaker, Joss Colchester. And yeah, let him start with his presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Erica. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here with everyone. Hopefully my audio is all good and you can see me and everything. Great to get a chance to share some ideas with you today. Both those big ideas about complexity and systems thinking and systems innovation and transformation. Those are words that I understood in the Swedish spoken there, so I sound at home. And also a bit about the work that we're doing at SI. So just to say a word about myself, I'm Joss Colchester. I'm originally from Ireland, but lived here in London for the past 4 or 5 years. My background's in design and technology, but came across complexity theory about 8-9 years ago and got really fascinated by that. And started thinking about how to take those ideas and make them more accessible to people. So that graphic there is super, right? We're in that box of the industrial age thinking, and how do we make all that complexity outside that box more accessible to people? Because it's the only sustainable way, right? The boxes like that, they're always going to fall to pieces within a certain period of time. And it's only by helping us and helping others kind of embrace that complexity and build things, ways of understanding and ways of organizing that are relevant for that we can really start to build, you know, a more sustainable world. So that's a good start. And I could talk for a very long time about that graphic, but let's maybe just jump into a word about systems innovation. So hopefully you see my screen. Is it all good? Yeah, let me just put this on full screen. So here we are, a bit of an introduction to systems innovation. I can't actually see you guys, so can you see the screen? Everything's okay?
Looks okay.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, sorry, I don't normally use meetings or this program, so haven't got a great, I can't see you guys, but hopefully you can see the presentation, systems innovation I'm going to talk about, and also a bit about the SI network. And yeah, maybe start just with an overview. I'm not sure how familiar you are with these ideas. This is another image similar to the last one, a bit more of a kind of realistic representation of the world we live in. And I think it is a good place to start the story with complexity and the complexity of the world we live in, and how that has actually hugely amplified and expanded over the past couple of decades with globalization, with information technology and so forth. And we're kind of entering into a new reality, I would say, of complex systems and having to learn to understand them and work with them. And it's created a lot of benefits for us over the past few decades, but it's also creating a lot of challenges for us. These very complex challenges we see emerging and escalating. Actually, none of them are really getting any better. And we're really struggling with them. We can think about soil erosion, climate change, a lot of challenges around cybersecurity, water crisis, inequality, so on and so forth. These are not, these challenges are at a level of complexity that's really kind of beyond us in many ways. And we call them wicked problems, and maybe you've heard that term, and they differ fundamentally from these simpler problems. They're embedded within vast networks, and they're never one thing. They're always many things. They're part of many networks of interacting factors. And this is kind of what we're struggling with. We're very good at those simple problems. We've been fixing those for a long time. You know, broken light bulb, your car has a problem, a toothache. We're very good at fixing those. We're even good at complicated problems, building skyscrapers and airplanes, sending people to the moon. It's the wicked problems that we struggle with, and still have to build a capacity around that, because they have characteristics that really don't fit inside the boxes that we've developed. As I mean, this is very fitting, right, for your graphic. It's that complexity outside the box that's really creating these new challenges, and what we have inside the box, we saw there, our linear approaches are kind of failing us at this stage, and we need new ways of thinking, new ways of organizing. And that I would call systems innovation. But I mean, here's just a really good illustration of our education systems and the kind of mismatch they have with the complexity of the world these students, or the new challenges, the new economic realities, the new jobs that these students will be presented with when they leave university. There's this huge mismatch between the system and the reality of the environment that they're operating in. So there's a need for systems change, as we call it, right? Education systems change, healthcare systems change, and many other areas. And that goes beyond, you know, individual products or services. We know those kinds of changes don't come about by producing a better widget, a faster or a cheaper or a better or whatever it is, product or service. They're what we call systems innovations or systems changes. And again, we're quite good at the product and service innovation and change, but this systems level stuff, it's really a capacity we need to learn at all levels, from the individual to the organization to societal. It's a capacity we don't have, and it's one we really need to kind of cultivate and develop to be able to effectively address these wicked challenges. And it's about this capacity to bring the right pieces, the right actors, the right capability together across different systems, across different networks in a coordinated way, this ecosystem approach to be able to really put things together in the right way around those complex challenges. And Erica asked me to add this slide also, just thinking a bit about the evolution in our capacity and approaches to innovation. And of course, the first ones are a lot about product and service, closed kind of pipeline in a corporation sort of innovation. We've also had open innovation, where they take in ideas from outside the enterprise. And we've developed this idea of innovation ecosystems, and we see those, have those in Stockholm, in London. Is quite successful in terms of creating a lot of startups, but actually those startups aren't very aligned around any kind of bigger purpose. They're just, you know, growing GDP and so forth. And we're talking about a different level of innovation, which is actually where they're aligned and coordinated on systems level towards a particular purpose and a particular challenge. And that's the kind of innovation we need to learn to do if we're going to be successful at surviving and thriving as open societies in this new world of complexity. So that's a bit of the ideas, the why of this and what it is, but just say a little bit about kind of methods for going about and doing this. What do you actually need? You need some systems thinking, as we've talked about, if you're going to embrace that complexity. You also need to understand the systems you're dealing with. So systems mapping, I'll quickly jump into these to explain what I mean. Transition design, we heard that word already. How do you actually work with processes of transition? How do we design and develop those? And this systems building or ecosystem building. We think these are kind of core capacities that need to be present if someone or an organization wants to approach doing systems innovation. So the systems thinking, hopefully you're a little bit familiar with that. It's really moving away from this framing, this linear kind of cause and effect view of the world, where we narrow down to find and fix a particular problem. And it's trying to move to a more holistic view of challenges, a more contextualized view of challenges, of issues, and thinking about the network of factors within which they exist. So expanding our view beyond trying to find a few variables that's causing the problem and change those variables. That's a reductionist approach to a more holistic one. And it requires kind of both a change in our thinking, but in some sense, it's a change in our being also, trying to really move away from a more ecosystem view of the world and way of relating to other things. And we hear a lot about that in the context of the natural environment, how we've kind of related to our ecosystem, the global ecosystem, in a very egocentric way, and the kind of problems it's created for us, and that we need a more ecosystem thinking and way of being in the world if we're really going to embrace the complex systems we form part of. So that's kind of changing the thinking that needs to come about. Just to give you an idea of maybe an expression of that different paradigm. Maybe you've heard of this idea, the 15-minute city. It was, I think, initially introduced by the deputy mayor of Paris. And actually, it's a holistic kind of concept of restructuring our cities to integrate them instead of disintegrating them, which is a lot of what we did during the industrial age. We kind of separated functions out, and we ended up in these very kind of fractured and compartmentalized cities. And the 15-minute city is an idea of kind of integrating that. But I find this graphic a very good illustration of what we mean by systems innovation, right? If we have this problem of, like many cities, decarbonization, we start focusing on transport and cars, and thinking about moving to electric cars. And that's in a sense, reductionist approach in terms of narrowing down to a particular solution and then trying to find that particular part of the system that's a problem and change that part. And a systems innovation approach might look at something very different. Might say, actually, it's not so much about the cars, it's about the whole context that that car exists within, the transport system, and how do we reorganize that whole system. And that's the 15-minute city concept of reorganizing the city so that we don't fix the car, we don't turn it to electric, we actually potentially dissolve the car. Maybe you don't need it anymore. And in so doing, you potentially fix many other problems also, such as pollution, such as accidents, and generally a nicer city. So that's the idea of not fixing problems, not solving problems, but dissolving problems, and not fixing one problem, but you multi-solve. When you start to change and think systemically, you don't solve one problem, you almost always address a number of problems at the same time in an integration way. So that's the 15-minute city, just to illustrate a kind of more holistic way of thinking about challenges. This is systems mapping. We need to actually understand some of that complexity outside the box, and systems mapping is a good way of doing that. Hopefully you're familiar with it, to really just try and understand the elements and interrelationships within a system. And yeah, helps us develop a kind of collective understanding of that system and integrate our different perspectives, because we're often looking at it in a very fractured way, and that doesn't enable us to kind of collaborate and work together. So systems mapping, and then we can kind of find intervention points also to start to make changes, start to make a transition. So we do need to understand these transition processes, how they work in complex systems. And maybe you're familiar with this multi-level perspective. We have big changes out there in the landscape that's affecting the regime, disrupting it. We have the niche innovations, opportunities for them to disrupt the incumbent way of doing things and change systems. So just a quick illustration of what we mean by transition design. Also, we need to do some kind of ecosystem building. We have these new innovations. How do we put them together in the right way and get them working together? New value flows, ways of assessing that, kind of activities they're going to do together, kind of platform that's needed for that. So that's the ecosystem building aspect of it. So that was just quickly to walk through, different dimensions and ultimately trying to grow a new system, right? Grow a new ecosystem and put the parts together in a new way that's needed. And you can think about different levels to that and assess for that. So it's just a little example from Glasgow City that had a big challenge with violent crime, one of the most violent cities in Europe. Until 2005, when this police officer, McCluskey, set up a violence reduction unit that was highly successful and actually moved away from kind of reductionist approach to addressing crime, where you're trying to fix and solve the parts. You're locking the young adults up who are acting out the violent crime, and moving to a more ecosystem approach of thinking about what's the context, what's the social network they're embedded in, and how do we influence that and start to think about it, actually as a pandemic, the way these actors are being influenced by the whole context around them, and can we change that, and then start to work with a diversity of actors to try and influence the situation they're in, social workers, education, so on and so forth, social welfare. And very successful at that. Crime's being reduced massively. It's an interesting kind of case study. Another quick one, just running out of time here, but Mexico City had a huge challenge around water, still does. It's a very industrial age model where the water is pumped in from outside the city. They had actually an earthquake in the 2000s, and that infrastructure was damaged. There was huge flooding, and this organization, Isla Urbana, went in and introduced a decentralized water harvesting approach to providing water to the city, and was very successful at that, created local economies, local communities around capturing and sharing water. So that's kind of a decentralized way of addressing this challenge. So just to say a bit about the SI network. I founded about 8 years ago. It's a community of about 22,000 members spread around the world, all interested in systems thinking, systems change, and trying to learn that and apply it. You could think about it as a very big community of practice. We see ourselves as a platform, developing an ecosystem of systems innovators. So helping people on their journey from initial awareness, connecting, learning, and co-creating, and really trying to build people's and organizations' capacity around systems innovation. We are a network of hubs. There are about 12 of those around the world within which people connect and again reflect the larger community, this community of practice, again learning and applying the ideas of systems thinking, systems innovation. Also thematic hubs in particular areas like finance, governance, food, we have organizations, design, and so on, about 9 of those. And looks a bit like this. Meet up in Barcelona, Singapore, London conference, meet up in London, online workshops and hackathons, projects we work on. This is building an innovation ecosystem in Africa, an entrepreneurial startup ecosystem to address climate change there in collaboration with BFA Global. So that's just a little illustration of what it looks like. You can find us here at Systems Innovation Network.
So thank you so much, Joss. And now I will hand over the stage to Tobias, and who has both an international perspective, but also a Swedish perspective, of course.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you, Joss, for a very, very interesting presentation. So I will do a short, brief presentation myself too. And I hope that this will spark some kind of new ideas. I hope you can see it. Let's see if I can share my screen. Let's see. Can you all see something called systems?
Not yet.
Not
No.
yet. Not yet.
It worked before, so
it worked
there is
before,
hope.
yeah. It's always technology.
Now.
Now.
Yep.
Can you see it? Perfect. This is quite interesting. I meet a lot of companies and organizations, both in Sweden and abroad, and a lot of people tell me that the systems are not working anymore, and they are a little bit scared because they are all waiting. What is the next system? And no one wants to touch this. This is something I want to stress. I don't believe we are replacing the old system with a new system. We are replacing the old system with many systems in pluralis. And this is going to be very, very interesting, but also very, very complicated, because it's not just one system that is going to replace the old ones. It will be different systems, and it depends on what kind of what you want to achieve, what you are targeting. If it's, for example, targeting complexity, then you need different types of systems. And in order to do this, you need to understand that if you want to dive into complexity, I believe that it's very, very crucial to understand what are the most important pieces that we are going to dissect. My brain works a little bit differently, so I'm a little bit obsessed with details. So a lot of people, when you walk into a forest, you immediately understand that you are in a forest. My brain works differently. I analyze every tree, every plant, every animal, and hopefully in the end, I understand that I'm in a forest. This may sound very silly and stupid, but the thing is that if you don't understand the crucial pieces, the most important details, you miss on something very important, because the big picture is built upon small details. And if you don't get those small details, you are probably not going to succeed. So details, if you want to target complexity, are super important. But it's not just about handling one tool. You also need to be able to handle this one. And this is not some kind of martial art thing. This is like a telescope, and it's not just another telescope. This is one of Galileo Galilei's telescope, because it's about understanding the small details that are important, but also to be able to handle the big picture. It's the combination, when to dive into details and when to raise the bar and see the big picture. And as Erika told you before I do what I do today, I worked a couple of years at the Nobel Prize Museum. I think it was 9 years. And I'm a little bit obsessed with the Nobel Prize too. And the thing about the Nobel Prize is a lot of people, especially abroad, they think that the Nobel Prize is about like a golden medal. And if you ask people in Sweden, they think it's about a big gala dinner and food and dresses. The Nobel Prize is not about a medal, and it's not about a big party. That's quite interesting. What the Nobel Prize is all about, if you dive into details, it's actually this. It is about people, and it has always been about people. And if you want to target complexity, it's about understanding that the most crucial part is going to be people. I love this picture. This is supposed to be the most intelligent photo ever taken. It was taken at this conference in Solvay many years ago in 1927. There are 29 people in this picture. Out of them, I have circled 17, and those 17 are people that will receive or has already received the Nobel Prize. And those of you who like details will probably recognize Marie Curie or Maria Sklodowska in the first row, but also Albert Einstein. And I want to stress something very important. Those people that I didn't circle in this picture are not stupid ones. Because you have, for example, Albert Einstein's teacher in the background, and it was quite clever. It's about understanding if you want to target complexity and if you want to target systems, it will be about people. But speaking about Nobel Prizes and Nobel Prize laureates, I have all of the Nobel Prize laureates in my head since I love details, 1,000 there is, and I love to analyze and see what are the differences and what are the similarities. And one thing that actually connects each and every Nobel Prize laureate is this word, creativity, that I think is super important if you want to target systems or complexity. And creativity is a very vague word. Everyone says we love it, we want to be creative, but we very seldom define what it is. And for me, creativity is not just about thinking differently. Everyone can think differently. It's not like rocket science. It's about thinking differently, but also executing those different ideas. That's what the Nobel Prize laureates has managed to do. They've been able to see things from a different perspective, and they have actually executed the idea. That's the funny part. It doesn't matter if it's literature or if it's medicine. A Nobel Prize laureate in literature, for example, they come up with this great idea, let's write a book, and they actually did it. They wrote a book or a couple of books. It was a long procedure. It was complicated. They managed to write this really nice book. They got it published, they got nominated, and later on they got the Nobel Prize in literature. But you have the same thing, for example, in medicine with some researcher diving in, for example, cancer treatment, spending years of their life diving and digesting and trying to understand cancer to develop new kind of maybe cancer treatment. They publish in scientific journals. They managed to do it. And they later on are nominated to receive a Nobel Prize in medicine. So what the Nobel Prize is all about that people tend to miss out on is its success stories on how to think different, but also how to execute those different ideas. And that's why the Nobel Prize is super interesting if you want to understand and to be able to handle, for example, complexity. And when I worked at the Nobel Prize Museum, since I have a background in languages, I love also words. So I painted words on the museum floor, and I still think that's the most important part of that museum. And one of the words that I painted on the museum floor was persistency. And I think that is very important to stress today when we are talking about systems and complexity. Because when I spoke to the Nobel Prize laureate on how to push the innovation envelope, on how to be creative, a lot of them told me, Tobias, it's all about persistency. And we tend to underestimate the time it takes to change things, especially today when we are working in a society when everything should be ready yesterday. If you want to target something that is really complex, it will take time. And if we give up when it's get hard, we will never ever succeed. And there are several number of examples in the Nobel Prize where people has worked for 25 or 30 years until they managed to get recognized. But something that I will stress is no, it's not just about persistence. We need to be able to do many things. So I painted many words on the museum floor, and I made a list for you because I guess that you haven't been to the Nobel Museum, all of you. So one of the other words I painted was communication. I will not dive into everyone because I know I love details, but I will speak about a couple of ones. Communications are crucial because when I spoke to the Nobel Prize laureates once again, they told me it's not about being super intelligent or being super smart all the time. If you can't communicate so other people around you understand what you want to achieve, you will probably not succeed. And that is very, very important to stress and underline, that communication is a very, very important skill if you want to change the system. But it's also about having a clear vision, and I actually don't like those companies that are using the same vision or mission statements. Everyone wants to be sustainable, or they want to be innovative or creative. I think it's quite funny that everyone is choosing those very vague and abstract words that they never define what it is and think that something is going to happen. I think that we need those words, but they need to be super clear so everyone understands what we want to achieve. And something that I would like to stress is the importance of work. And that is something I speak a lot about in Sweden and also in the western part of the world, because I meet so many people that has this idea that I don't want to work, I want to retire early, I want to have this quick exit and become like a millionaire and sit on a beach and do nothing. That is almost as stupid as going to the gym and do nothing. If we want to push the innovation envelope and if we want to drive new systems, it's all about the work. And it's not about other people should work. You need to work yourself. And I'm not telling you that you should work longer work hours. It's not about that. But we need to work much more smarter. We need to push things. And to summarize, people are different. Some people love to work, some people are good in communication, some people ask questions, some people go to different meetings. That's nice, but people are drawn to similar people, and when people are hanging around with the same, they start thinking and acting in the same way, and that's not always the most clever part to do it. So the most important thing that we can all learn from the Nobel Prize laureate is a word that I was not allowed to paint on the museum floor, and when the director told me that, I decided to resign the same day, because the most important thing we want to target when we are talking about systems is collaboration, which may sound very naive, but it's not, because this is not a one-man or one-woman show. It's complicated and complex things. We need to work together. So collaboration is a very important thing to understand. We need to build a structure based upon collaboration, not competition. The funny part about collaboration, it's not enough, because what kind of collaboration do we want to achieve in order to target complexity? Well, we don't want people who are the same to work together with all the people who are the same. You need to spice that word with this word, diversity, which is very much misunderstood today, because people think this is about gender or it's about skin color. What kind of things you have between your legs or what kind of color you have on the skin. That's stupid. I don't say that gender doesn't matter, but the thing is that this word is about perspectives. And diversity is about making sure that you have different perspectives around the table. And some of the perspectives you can see with your eyes, like skin color or what you have between your legs, and some things you can't see, like medical history or how people's brain are wired. And we need to make sure that we have plenty of perspectives around the table if we want to solve complexity. And in order to make this work, we need trust. This is the most important ingredient if we want to target complexity. And this is also very tricky, because we tend to trust people that are very much like ourselves because we like our own skills, and we don't tend to distrust people that are different from ourselves. And we need to overcome this because we need to create a culture based upon collaboration, diversity, and trust in order to be able to solve some of those really, really complicated and complexity things that we are facing right now. But this is just a start, because the problem with this ecosystem today is that people are hanging around in their own ecosystem and they are comparing themselves with people in the same ecosystems. So if you go, for example, to the television stations, they hang around with other international television stations. That's nice. And cab drivers hang around with other cab drivers. And then suddenly something like Uber comes along and disrupts everything. But this is not just about like technology and Uber. This is something that is really, really scary about the old system, because the old system was quite slow. So it was all right to hang around with similar people and compare yourself with your own ecosystem. But I guess that most of you were quite surprised when, for example, Donald Trump won the American election, or when the British people decided to leave the European Union, or when the pandemic hit, or when the war in Ukraine happened. The problem is that those crazy stuff that we think is very, very random will occur much more often, because we are just hanging around with similar people. Those people call those black swans, and that's quite interesting. I believe that those black swans will happen over and over again if we tend to do the old way and keep in our old systems. We need to expose our ecosystems to other ecosystems. And how do you do that for real? Well, I often use this picture. This is taken in Stockholm, and it's not actually about Stockholm. I think this is about Scandinavia, actually, but I use Stockholm because Stockholm is a nice city and it's also a capital built upon different islands, and people tend to like this capital. Oh, it's nice, clear water and things like that, trees in the city. It's not about trees in the city or clear water. Stockholm is a capital built upon different islands. It's not the island that is only the important thing, it's the bridges. It's creating a system where you understand the importance of bridges. When I want to create some techie stuff, I walk over a couple of bridges and go to the Royal School of for the Royal School of Engineering. A lot of smart engineering people. The problem with them is that they don't know anything about business. Then I grab those people in their ears and I go to Stockholm School of Economics, where they actually have some kind of knowledge about business. But the problem with that school is that they don't have any money. And then eventually we probably go to Frankfurt or London to get some money. In a world where people are screaming more regulations and more walls, that's actually not the solution for everything. I think that's stupid. I think the future is about bridges. I think that we need to understand that, yes, what are those most important islands that are out there and how do we bridge them? Because the bridging part is something that we have missed out on. And the problem with complexity is something that is that things fall in between. And we need people to be able to make sure that things don't fall in between. And going back to those words on the museum floor, what I have realized today is that everyone wants to be like beautiful, like an adjective, or they want to be innovative, or they want to innovate stuff, they want to be a verb. Very few people want to be that word and, which is a conjunction. Conjunction is a very important ingredient, because a text without conjunction is not readable. For me, this and is the bridge and also the leadership. How do you bridge things? And that's not like being a generalist, that's a speciality. It's about understanding that that is something that is missing out. And that's why you have a hard time facing complexity. And something that is also very, very problematic about complexity is that people are still using these jigsaw puzzle pieces all the time. And they speak about this life puzzle, which I think is so stupid. I don't dislike people doing puzzles. That's nice for you for relaxation, or if you don't want to get Alzheimer's. But you shouldn't compare life to a puzzle or your organization to a puzzle, because that's really, really stupid. Because why is not life like a puzzle, or why isn't your organization like a puzzle? Well, because if you buy a puzzle or borrow a puzzle, you have the perfect picture on the box. There is not a perfect picture that we are striving for. And the problem when people are using this jigsaw puzzle metaphor is that they understand, okay, the old thing is not working, we need something different, let's recruit something different. That person probably don't fit into your organization, then you have to reshape that person or your organization, which is like a disaster for both parts. And we need to move away from this jigsaw puzzle metaphor if we want to target complexity. Because if we want to target complexity, we need to understand that in a jigsaw puzzle, one puzzle piece only fits in one place. That's not reality when it comes to complexity. Life is much more like Lego pieces. One piece is fairly useless, but you need to get a couple of pieces and you combine them to different things. And if you have like 10 or 20 different pieces, you can create a hospital or a school or whatever. So one piece is never enough. You need a couple of pieces, but not too many, because too many pieces create chaos. And what are those interesting pieces that we are going to combine? That's what I'm working on right now, and I've been working with for the last couple of years. As I see it, it's all about those 4 areas. It's about business. And those of you who doesn't like that word business, you can replace that word with operations, because that's the same thing. And when you dive into your business or your operation, you need to understand it's not just one thing. It's not binary. It's not just transactions, because if it's transactions, you can start selling guns, and maybe you don't want to do that. So business or operations is a little bit more complicated or complex. You need to establish what are those 1 or 2 or 3 or 6 or 7 most important pieces when it comes to your operation and business. And that's tricky. I know a lot of people say, no, our business is very complex. We have so many pieces. No, you need to prioritize. What are those most interesting parts and most important parts? And once you have established that, you also need to target development, because we can't stop time. So if you don't target development from the beginning, you are doomed. And development, it's just not just one thing. Development needs to be a couple of things, not too many. And development needs to be tied to some kind of business. Otherwise, it's fairly useless. And here we have the biggest problem today, because we have people who love their operations or their business, and we have people who love development. And those groups doesn't like each other. Of course, they need to work together. But this is just the beginning, because the biggest problem today when it comes to systems and complexity is this piece that is called long term. We are choosing very short-term solutions all the time. And I'm not saying that short-term solutions are always bad. Some things are nice when you can use a short-term solution. But some of those areas that we are targeting today will not be solved with short-term solutions. We need to understand this is a long-term thing that we need to target. And then you need to establish what are those ingredients if you want to bake this long-term cake. What are those 5 or 6 most important ingredients? And as I see it, I oftentimes, if you want to target long-term thinking, it's tied to ownership. And ownership is not just the business owner who is controlling the money. It's also including things like yourself owning the part of your project, or it's about risk, or it's about engagement. And what you see in front of you is actually a circle training class. Because if you want to replace the system with something, you can use this framework. Because it's not going to be the operation or the company with the best business that is going to succeed. It's not going to be the company or operation with the best development or the best long-term or the best owners that will succeed. It will be the business and operation that manage to handle those 4 pieces. This is a circle training class. You need to work them and put them together. And sometimes you start with the ownership, and sometimes you start with business, sometimes you start with long-term. It's the Lego pieces once again. And this is what I use when I help different companies and organizations to establish some kind of framework, because otherwise, without frames and frameworks, you create chaos and people tend to go back to those old stuff. And something that I also would like to stress is that when I meet some organizations, I did some work with, for example, in precision medicine, and I was sitting with very great professors in this area, and they were saying this is very, very complex. And I told them, yes, it is. Yeah, we are so alone. No one understands us. And I said, yes, you are in one way alone, but in another way, you are not alone. Because what you want to achieve, you want to target like diseases before they actually happened. And you can't do that in every area, but in some areas you can actually do that. But there are things in society that are quite similar. For example, crime. So crime is you want to target the criminals before they become criminals. And what have they discovered? Well, it's not about just creating more police stations or more prisons. It's also about working with people outside the police and court systems, like schools or social care or whatever. And as I suggested to them, maybe the solution for precision medicine is for the hospitals and medicine to start working outside, combining their ecosystem with another ecosystem. And this is once again complicated because in order to do that, you need some kind of framework.
Okay, so thank you all of us for joining today and hope to be in touch in the future. And you're so welcome to our next seminars and the community. And